Hello, BookTube. I went out earlier today, which was a mistake on a number of different levels. It really was. Boston is not having anywhere near the apocalyptic and unending triple digit heat that the rest of the world is having. People have been commenting on social media. They've been sending me emails saying, why I mean, I live in, you can practically fill in the city anywhere in the world. You're now on your third consecutive week of triple digit temperatures every single day with not the slightest hint of any alleviation, never anything cool, no rain, no nothing. And I've seen lots of stories, I've seen lots of social media posts, I've gotten lots of emails from people saying, wasn't anybody talking about this anymore? Oh, our streets are melting. This isn't changing. We're stuck here. Why isn't anybody talking about this anymore? They did 2 weeks ago when it made headlines everywhere, but not anymore, and it's still going on. Entirely true, and Boston has been spared that. Boston's summer has been mild, including today. But the humidity has been creeping up and up today, and it's been mighty hot on its own. It was a bad idea to go walking around. It's a bad idea to go walking around anyway if you're not all that hale and healthy. And in addition to that, I have this massive project that I have to get done. I really can't spare any time. I'm making BookTube videos because I miss your faces, but I really can't spare any time for frivolous extra activities, especially when I know they're going to involve 50 pounds of books, as they will whenever I leave the house without Frida. I left without Frida this morning. Maybe, though, that was the reason. I mean, I've been finally, after all this time, after frittering away the whole summer with sexy Steve streams, I've been finally putting in yeoman's hours on this thing, and maybe that's why I felt like I needed a break. But whatever the reason is, I went out, I did a couple of things, I got back in one piece. I rested for a long time, and now I want to show you the inevitable 50-pound pile of books that I got. So let's see what we have here. We've got our ergonomics just right here. We have 2 mass market paperbacks and a bunch of paperbacks and a couple of hardcovers. And the first mass market paperback, I'm glad to have a double of this. I will always grab it. This is Them Bones by Howard Waldrop, who I'm sure that some of you are going to tell me is still alive. This is a very, very 90s cover there. Is that right? Yeah, 1984. Very, very 80s cover with when science fiction used to look like this. And this is a time travel, time irregularities novel. I think it's this author's only novel. It's certainly the only novel of his that I've ever read. I have a huge sweet spot for this author for his short stories. He has 2 or 3 volumes of short stories that are wonderful. If you are a fan, if you are a fan of science fiction and you haven't read Howard Waldrop, you really owe it to yourself to find one of his short story collections and just treat yourself. And of course, one of his short stories is one of my favorite things in the whole genre. Short story, novel, epic, series, whatever you want to call it, however long. The Ugly Chickens by Howard Waldrop, I think, is just fantastic. I read it all the time. I know it by heart. I love it. I have a mass market paperback of this, but like I mentioned before, you never see these old mass markets anymore. I never do. In just a normal place, these were all free. They weren't in a specialty bookstore or anything like that. So you never see them anymore. So I grab them when I do. You never know. Them Bones is not going to be reprinted anywhere. I don't think I have an ebook of it or even access to one. So, and then this next one's the same thing. It's classic science fiction. It's a different order of magnitude than Them Bones. I would put them on the same 100 book list. But this is Norstrilia by Cordwainer Smith. Again, a rare standalone novel in his world of the instrumentality of mankind. I don't know that Del Rey did a great job. No, this has no extras. Okay, Del Rey did a great job with Cordwainer Smith. He is a great science fiction writer who is not known outside of science fiction. He's probably not in print at the moment. Terrible shame. Cordwainer Smith, I'm going to say, is well and truly dead. I think that Howard Waldrop is too, but you never know. You people always contradict me. But Cordwainer Smith wrote a lot of stuff. The guy writing under the name Cordwainer Smith wrote a lot of stuff. Norstrilia is his epic novel. But I would love it if somebody would do a really nice big, see that Chronicles of Conan right there? Or the big book of Sherlock Holmes right here at my fingertip there. Somebody would do a big volume like that of Cordwainer Smith, I would certainly cheer. This is a novel all about the Santa Clara drug, which drastically prolongs life. And it is cultivated from fungus that grow on the wool of gigantic sheep. It's cultivated into strewn, which makes it incredibly valuable as a substance. Much like the spice in Dune, I would argue that Australia is only a rung lower as a novel, as an accomplishment than Dune. But I never see this anymore, so I grab it when I do. Then we have a paperback that came up the other day, a couple of different times. It came up, Britta did a video about terrific nonfiction, and this book came up, Pale Rider, by Laura Spinney, about the 1918 flu pandemic. It was just, this has pictures, I think, from that pandemic, show you what it was like. Oh no, this doesn't have an inset of pictures. It just has pictures at the beginning of every chapter. Okay. Well, I read this book and absolutely loved it. It's I think one of 3 or 4 books that I've read on the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. I thought it was fantastic. I'd never, to my knowledge, seen a paperback before. So this was pure booktube serendipity, where it just happened to be there in a gigantic spill of books. Perfectly good for a reread. I haven't read this since I wrote a review of it, and I was very pleased to see that my review is blurbed on this paperback. That's another reason why I'm thinking that I'd never seen the paperback before, because I would have remembered that, I think. Then this next one, I have this already. I grabbed it because it was free, and I think it would make a great giveaway. If one of you wants it, it is better than you would think when you just glance at it. You would think, okay, I have the measure of that thing. I know how good it could be, and it's much better than that. This is the Richard Burton Diaries, edited by Chris Williams, and this copy is not in the best of shape. So if one of you were interested, I would send you the other copy that I have, my copy in my library, and just keep this one myself. I don't care what shape books are in. But this is much more than just the usual celebrity diary book, much more, because Burton was more. And you realize that after about 30 pages, and then for the next 200 pages, you're reading with increasing embarrassment, because he's so easy to lampoon. I mean, he's not known anymore, but when he was an actor on the boards, it was so easy to lampoon his style of acting. It's big and broad and very Royal Shakespeare Company. It's very grandiloquent in a way that isn't done anymore. I would argue that maybe the closest you would get would be Russell Crowe in some registers of his acting, but there's no call for it either. It's not that it's not done anymore, it's that moviegoers wouldn't know what to make of it. And not all moviegoers knew what to make of it in Burton's heyday either. It's born from the stage. It's born from, you've got this role, whether it's Hamlet or anything else, and yes, you want to understand the role and you want to get at the heart of the character that you're playing, but you also want to make sure that the schmucks in the back row, where you were when you were a kid and you couldn't afford a ticket, can see and hear everything. You're thinking about those minor sons from Wales. You're thinking about them when you give your performance. And if you learn this on the stage, if that's the first 15 years of you doing any kind of thespian work, then by the time you get into the movies, you're not going to be able to unlearn it. Which means every word will be audible in the back row of the theater. It means that every gesture will be plain and primary color. And we don't really do that anymore. I'd be hard-pressed to think of an example. But that is easy to lampoon. It's easy to look at that style, whether it's Burton or any of the other actors who did that. Every once in a while, you would get an actor from this period who could do that, but who could do a lot more as well, who could work subtlety into their performance. Of course, my beloved Peter O'Toole would be my example of that, although O'Toole and Burton would have laughed at that, I think. But they don't get to be the final word. The final word is me. But if you were ever guilty, if you ever watched a Richard Burton movie and you were ever guilty of writing him off that way, oh, right, one of these old blustering Hollywood alcoholics, by 200 or 300 pages, 30 pages, 100 pages, 200 pages, you'll be red-faced with shame, because this book will acquaint you with the real person. And usually when you deal with actor memoirs, actor diaries, whatever, the more you learn about the real person, the less there is there. They actually disappear from view. Try working your way through an Alec Guinness memoir. Just try doing that. Try reading a memoir by David Niven, of all people, God help us, or Alec Guinness, or whatever. It's almost never the case that you read one of these books and it deepens. The person deepens for you. Dear Me by Peter Ustinov would be a good example, but there aren't many. And you don't expect it to happen with Richard Burton just because of the persona that he has on stage and screen, and it does. It very much does. It's wonderful to read. Also, it's saturated with books. I never even crossed my mind before I read this the first time. And then I read it, and suddenly the thought leapt out of my mind that Richard Burton could easily have been happy as the literary editor of the Times Literary Supplement and never have acted at all in his life. He could easily have been happy doing that and done it really well. That was an extra weird, fun part, and this is a double. I don't know if I've sold that to any of you. I don't know if any one of you live in a book desert. You don't have any access to this. I'd be happy. I won't send you this one because this one's kind of falling apart, but I'll send you my copy, which is clean, and I think you will really enjoy it. And if you're a book person, you will find an unexpected book person in these pages. He's pretty much alone. It's so sad. All the other people in his life, especially, of course, Liz Taylor, will always talk about having a book or whatnot. It happens many times throughout these diaries that those of you who had this experience, I know that you have, many times throughout these diaries, you will hear that particular note of a diehard reader, a reader for whom reading means what it does to us. Not, oh yeah, I love reading. I do it 4 times a year. But what it does to us, what it means to us. There's a note that those readers sound when they are furtively looking for anyone, at any party, at any reading, anywhere, who will do that. Anyone who will do that, who has that same feeling. And it's so many pages in this book, he's just looking for that and not finding it. But anyway, and then we move on to An Act of Fate. This book has been cropping up in front of me everywhere I go. This is like the 5th copy that I have encountered in 2023. Which I think means that a big, serious reread is in order. A serious, detailed reread. And maybe I'm just waiting until I find an absolutely perfect copy, the exact copy that I want. The copy that I have here is from Canada. This is the Canadian trade paperback of A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. The big, obnoxious Oprah's Book Club mark on there. I won't call it a sticker because it's actually part of the cover. No way to get rid of it. This has a nice heft to it. I found a mass market paperback, an old American trade paperback that really wouldn't hold up. This, I think, might hold up to a reading, but I don't know if there are other versions out there, versions that I might like even more than this. This is a big, sprawling Indian epic. I loved it when I read it the first time. When was that? I read this when it first came out and was blown away. This came out in 1995, so well before I was a critic again. So I was not part of the great multi-voiced conversation about this book, but there was one. Everybody loved it. Everybody recognized it as a masterpiece. And I keep finding it, which is certainly fate's way of telling me that I should re-grapple with it. This next one is a July 2023 galley copy. No idea what it was doing at the bottom of a pile of random books. Of course I grabbed it because I got the advance copy and I sent it away to one of you. I got the finished copy and I sent it away to one of you and I pined for it. A lot of times I do that and I don't pine for it because our tastes are different. A lot of times one of you will go all googly-eyed over something that I wasn't all that interested in anyway. So you're welcome to it. This one, I gave the books away because I love to give books to people, but I missed it. And now all of a sudden I found it again. This is by Gloria Dickey, and it is 8 Bears. This is the advance copy. No idea what this is doing out in the world. It's certainly not mine. This is about the 8 bear species in the world today, the 8 remaining bear species, what they're like, what they say about the world, what we know about their natural history. It's a terrific work of natural history. Really, really good. So talk about unexpected. I was happy to find it. Then this next one, well, we have a Canadian trade paperback. I found a UK trade paperback. I love UK trade paperbacks. I love the heft of them, the solidity in the hand. I love the slightly, World War II paper rationing feel of the paper stock. I just love everything about them. If I were living in London or Leeds and I had access to the Oxfam shops and the used bookstores that were full of these things, I would be hopelessly impoverished because I would be getting everything. I love the format. And as I've shown on this channel, sometimes the love of the format overcomes my good sense. Sometimes I will buy a book that I pretty much don't like if it's a big, hefty, fat UK trade paperback. And today it was free. I didn't have to buy anything, but I have it, so I'm certainly going to re-grapple with it. This is from 2015, and I've already made my feelings known on this book. This is Purity by Jonathan Franzen, in one of these big, great UK trade paperbacks. So I wasn't going to leave it behind, since I wasn't doing any of the carrying. These weren't costing me anything. I read this when it came out, and it was one of two books around about that time that convinced me that Jonathan Franzen is all hat and no cattle. That he might have successfully marketed himself as, you know, a serious man of letters for American literature, but there's nothing there at all. It's just maundering. Maybe, I mean, it's been 7 years. Maybe give this another try. Certainly, I will. At least a chunk of it, I will, because, you know, I have it here now, so I will, maybe. And if that's true, that was from 2015. This next one is 40 years old. This is from 1988. And when this came out in 1988, I kicked the crap out of it. I wrote a long, scathing review of it. Perhaps not under my own name. This is I.F. Stone's book, The Trial of Socrates. And I almost never see this out in the wild. I almost never see it at all. I know that it's out there. I.F. Stone has largely gone. A big, generous anthology that puts him in his time and place, you know, the greatest hits, that sort of thing. I don't think such a thing exists. I don't think such a thing has existed in 30 years. And I foresaw that and made much of it in my review, in the review that I wrote, which got to Stone. He read it, and it was a systematic, paragraph by paragraph dissection and takedown of this book, which basically just tells the story of Socrates and the men of Athens and the youth of Athens and the trial of Socrates and what we know about it and what it means for civic discourse today. I'm almost tempted to say, it's heresy, I know, because I am infallible, but I'm almost tempted to say that I had a bee in my bonnet when I reviewed this originally and that I really should go at it again. It's been enough time. I think I will go at this again. I definitely will go at this again. I found a free hardcover. I cleaned it up. I think I will go at this again and not only see what's there in the book, but also try to figure out what was bothering me so much at the time. It might not have had anything to do with the book, which would be scandalous. If that's true, it should be scandalous, because how many times have I gone on? How many times have I clambered up on my soapbox and said that a reviewer who can't stop that from happening has no business reviewing books? I'd like to think that perversely, I'm kind of hoping, a part of me is kind of hoping, that the book annoys me all over again to justify the 28-year-old Steve who reviewed it in 1988. Yeah, he was right. This is as annoying as it could be. If it isn't, if it's competent, unobjectionable, what if it's saintly? God help us. If it's saintly, oh my God, I'll never hear the end of it from myself. I couldn't resist. So, and then this next one, big fat hardcover. I shouldn't have grabbed it, but I love this book. I have the ebook, but I love this book. I love how lavishly made a thing it is as a hardcover book, and the book itself is terrific. This is Doris Kearns Goodwin. This is The Bully Pulpit, which is her. It's a big fat book, deckle edges and beautiful end paper artwork. The photos are perfectly deployed all throughout the book. This is her story of the incredible contested election, the three-way election between Wilson and Taft and Roosevelt. It's the story of the split between lifelong friends, William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt, and how that became bitter and eventually was made up and whatnot. It's the story of the politics of the day, and all of that is great. I love this author. I think she can do no wrong. But a very enjoyable element of this book is not just that story, but how people told that story at the time, specifically how the press told that story, how McClure's magazine told that story, who was writing about these things, why were they writing about them, what was their prose like. So history is never going to forget either of these two guys. History has completely forgotten all of these people, especially the inadvertent star of the show, Ida Tarbell. Just a masterfully done thing. Doris Kearns Goodwin, when she's on her game, she really has a talent for cast of thousands books that don't go off the rails. Team of Rivals is the same way. It's a cast of thousands books that doesn't go off the rails. Usually they do. Usually historians are no more able to handle 10 characters as focal points in a work of, of narrative than writers, than novelists are able to do that. Usually people can't do that. And it worked perfectly here. So I got the big fat hardcover, even though that feels very anachronistic at this point. And that is it. That was just a totally unnecessary, hot and humid summer mail haul here, a book haul. These things were right there. They were piled. There's a mountain of books. I could have taken 3 times this many and probably had plenty of interesting stuff. I winnowed. I was resisting myself the whole time. I should be able to look at a pile of such books and walk by. Instead of thinking, well, I'd better limit how much I take, I should look at those things and say, I'm not going to take anything. But I'm not yet evolved to that state. So I got the Bully Pulpit. I got Eye of Stones, The Trial of Socrates. Oh my God, it's the trial of Steve Donoghue is what it really is. Then Purity by Jonathan Franzen, full of his fetish about German people. Oh my God, I'll be delving back into it. Then 8 Bears. Who knew that I would ever find this? Surely the surprise of the day. I found Rowan Mysteries, A Fine Balance, which is not the surprise of the day because I never turn around now without finding a copy of this book. I found the Richard Burton Diaries, and I got it even though it is a double because one of you might like it. Then Pale Rider by Laura Spinney, brought up on British Channel, a really good book. And 2 mass market paperbacks, Australia by Cordwainer Smith, whose short stories really are not to be missed. And also Them Bones by Howard Waldrop, whose short stories are really not to be missed. So a pretty good, totally unnecessary book haul, as totally unnecessary book hauls go. But anyway, I'm going to try to restrain myself when it comes to things like this for the next 6 days. By dawn next Wednesday, this massive project is going to be done. Or I am. By dawn next Wednesday, I'm setting myself a time limit. I've got a whole bunch of reasons. I'm going to set a time limit at dawn this coming Wednesday, after which I'm going to succeed, and then I'm going to celebrate. But I needed to stretch my legs anyway. And once I did that, I was doomed for books. So I'll wrap this up for now. Hope you found something here of interest. Let me know about the Richard Burton Diaries. And I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.